It ticks every single box what you want from a signing, as a football fan. I mean, there's the emotional side to it, there's the kind of wonder kid side to it, and then there's the necessity side to it as well.
I always felt City were one short in the front three positions last season. It is being very critical, that, from me.
At the same time, you could say I'd rather have one winger less than no strikers. Right now, Kalvin Phillips He's much better than Fernandinho was for the last 2 years, and simply because he has the legs still. And I think he's probably a lot more similar to Fernandinho than Rodri was as well. He's got that energy. He will run and run and run.
He scored as many goals and registered as many assists as Joel Matip last season, which obviously isn't ideal for someone that you spent £100 million on. I said it numerous times last season. It did feel a bit of a shame that the handbrake was on Grealish.
This kind of crafted in a laboratory kind of style striker, 6'5"-ish. Olympic sprinter speed, absolutely clinical. There's no person in world football who's capable of shutting down one side of the pitch better than Kyle Walker, literally. I mean, I've never seen Kylian Mbappe not challenge someone to a foot race before.
Hello, welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com. We've already previewed Liverpool and Spurs. Go back and check out those podcasts if you haven't done so already. And this week, we're going to check out Manchester City. I'm delighted to welcome Stephen McInerney from Esteemed Kompany to talk all things City heading into the new season. Josh is with me as ever as well. Stephen, busy summer for Man City.
Busy summer.
Excited?
Very busy summer, mate. Yeah, actually, I am. I'm that kind of football fan who likes a lot of change. Not because I think we needed it, just because it's exciting. Football at the end of the day is entertainment, isn't it? And like, as long as we're not demonstrably harming the first team, and that's obviously up for debate, I guess. Largely, I don't mind a bit of change because I think it's necessary. I also think it's fun. When you've got all those players coming in with what they offer, it's hard not to be excited by, I guess, the shock of the new and seeing new players and new ideas, because we are going to have to change how we play, which I'm sure we'll get into today anyway. So yeah, I'm dead excited. I'm even excited for pre-season, which says everything, really.
Yeah, well, we'll get straight into it. We'll go straight in, starting with the transfer window assessment. Now, Josh, as I always start these podcasts by reminding people, you are a Manchester United fan. But Stephen makes a valid point there about the refresh, because that's what Sir Alex Ferguson used to do. He used to every now and again completely refresh the squad, whatever had happened the season before. And Manchester City are reigning champions, and they've made some changes.
Yeah, it's difficult to knock City when they've won back-to-back league titles, and in both of those seasons they were the top goal scorers, and obviously largely done that without a recognised centre forward. And now they've obviously added Erling Haaland to the mix, who's probably the most destructive number 9 available. So that is quite daunting for the rest of the league, especially for the red side of Manchester. But yeah, I've often found watching Man City.
I don't think you need to worry about the title, Josh.
One can hope after the pre-season results, but. Yeah, I often found watching City, especially in games against Liverpool, I always felt that City needed 3 chances before they scored a goal, whereas Liverpool I always felt were quite ruthless when they got that opportunity. And I think now that completely changes with Erling Haaland. He scored a league goal every 88 minutes over the last 2 seasons, which ranks second behind Robert Lewandowski. So that tells you the sort of calibre they're signing. His conversion rate in that time was 28%, which ranks right up at the top of all of Europe's best strikers as well. So as I mentioned, City didn't really have, at times didn't seem to have that ruthlessness in front of goal. And now obviously they've got Erling Haaland, who will just certainly do that. And yeah, not looking forward to watching that on a weekly basis, to be honest.
It ticks every single box what you want from a signing, as a football fan. I mean, there's the emotional side to it. There's the kind of wonder kid side to it. And then there's the necessity side to it as well. I mean, City fans, we've had it good, so I am definitely not going to sit here and complain. But we have been waiting for a striker since Aguero. And I don't, honestly, if I'd sat there and tried to create the perfect replacement, I probably would have come up with Haaland, a guy who's been in City since he was a baby. Literally, his dad and him, they love this club, and that's not an exaggeration. He's been following them since he was a kid, because obviously his dad captained Man City at one point. And of course, the fact that he still is very young. It's crazy, that feels like he's been around for ages, but he's only 21 years old, I think maybe 22 soon. But either way, he's still a baby in football terms. And he's also like this kind of crafted in a laboratory kind of style striker, 6'5"-ish. Olympic sprinter speed, absolutely clinical, clearly an immense desire to improve as well and succeed at the very highest level. It's just incredibly exciting. And even then, it wasn't even like an insane fee either. Obviously it's not cheap when you had all the bonuses and all that kind of to it, but it was very affordable given the fact that we're replacing Aguero, So for me as a City fan, I mean, it's just, it's so exciting. Like when we were linked to Kane, for example, I wasn't that excited even though he was brilliant, mainly because it was just, everyone knows Harry Kane and football, there was no mystery there, and that element of mystery is not really something that you get to see up when you support a club like Man City these days, because City are one of the best teams in the world now, so we tend to sign players that most people have heard of and whatever, or seen an awful lot of. Like we've seen a lot of Haaland, but not to the extent that we saw of Kane or something. So Haaland is still very much making his way into world football. So for me, it's exciting because he's at the start of his career. It's exciting because he's a City fan, and it's exciting because we need him. We need a striker, as you were saying earlier, man. We do. We, as good as City are, we have been maybe lacking a little bit of clinicalism. That's even a word? I know it is. But in big games, we'll use it. Yeah, that's one on WhoScored.com now. Is just one of your stats? But we've been lacking that in games against like Madrid, for example, in the Champions League. Though that should have been 5 or 6-2 in the first leg, and that's not an exaggeration. We missed tons of chances. And against Liverpool, for example, where we drew 2-2 this season in the league. Those games, City probably should have won them if they had someone to take the chances. So I'm hoping that Haaland is the guy essentially to fix that, to make a very good team, or an excellent team, maybe even just a little bit better.
Stephen just touched on Harry Kane a little bit there. Harry Kane probably suits the way Manchester City have played on the face of it when you look at it, Josh. But Pep, he'll adapt. He'll do something different. And I think there is scope that Haaland will score a lot of goals. But do you think they'll be happier to get him, obviously because of the age and all the stuff that Stephen's mentioned?
Absolutely. I think it's definitely one for now and also one for the future. I think Haaland's ceiling already is outrageous, and we don't know how far he can still go. He's scoring, I think he finished his time with Dortmund scoring basically a goal a game, which is just absolutely outrageous for someone like Stephen mentions, 21, maybe 22. He's done it on the Champions League. I think he scored at least one goal in all of his competitive debuts for Dortmund, maybe a hat-trick on his Bundesliga debut, a couple or at least a hat-trick on his Champions League debut for Dortmund. So I think Man City have got West Ham in their first game of the season, so that's probably quite daunting for West Ham. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. So obviously last season, Kevin De Bruyne scored more goals than he registered assists for the first time in a Premier League season. And you'd expect that to revert back to the other way. Now they've got a natural goal scorer, and the prospect of Kevin De Bruyne and Riyad Mahrez linking up with Haaland, he should have so many chances. And City missed their fair few of their clear-cut chances last season. But with Haaland, you just feel like he's just going to hit the ball as hard as he can. It's going to end up in the back of the net no matter what happens.
Yeah, Kalvin Phillips is through the door as well, Steve, and Fernandinho's replacement. How do you feel about that move?
I think it's a really smart signing, actually. And I know, obviously, it seems a little bit churlish to talk about, 40-ish million being a bargain, because it's a lot of money. It is. But I guess when City were linked to him, I thought we were going to be looking at, about 60, which seems to be the going rate for a lot of players City are linked to these days. And for 40 million, I think it could be a really smart signing. And I think people are presuming he's just going to be the Rodri swap in and out kind of thing. But I would be surprised if you see him often alongside Rodri as well, because at times I think Bernardo's game was not spoiled as such, but he was definitely asked to do things that didn't necessarily come to him, because Bernardo has that, that energy and that dynamism to get around the pitch. So he was the perfect foil alongside Rodri, who, as brilliant as he is, maybe doesn't have the dynamism or the engine to get around the pitch. So I always felt like Bernardo sacrificed a little bit of his attacking game just so he could help Rodri, obviously then freeing up someone like, De Bruyne to be a little bit more explosive. But don't be surprised, in my opinion, to see Kalvin Phillips often sat alongside Rodri, especially in the big games, when we're, especially once again, maybe against in a situation where we've got Real Madrid and we've got a few minutes left just to kill the game and keep the ball, and maybe a bit more of a defensive shield. So I think Phillips would be really useful, and he is an improvement on the squad because as much as I love Fernandinho, he was old. He sadly reached his peak a couple of years ago, and right now Kalvin Phillips is. He's much better than Fernandinho was for the last 2 years, and simply because he has the legs still. And I think he's probably a lot more similar to Fernandinho than Rodri was as well. He's got that energy. He will run and run and run. And what I love about Phillips is, when I was doing some research for my own video, is he seems to have got better every single year in terms of things like his pass completion and his overall game has improved. But then what's been asked of him has got more difficult as well. He's gone up the levels, from the Championship, of course, to the Premier League, then to the, really far stages of international competitions of England. And I think he's a really smart player who's going to give Pep loads of options. I think he'll obviously allow people like Rodri to get a rest every now and then. I think he'll allow people like Bernardo to maybe be a little bit further up the pitch where, many would say he's better. I think it's a good sign, and as I said, it's a little bit cheaper than I thought it was going to be. It's not cheap, of course, but look what 40 million gets you these days. It doesn't, it's most teams in the Premier League can end up spending near, around that, either in the top 10 or whatever. So, yeah, for me, it's a good signing. It improves our squad, and I think it's probably going to improve England as well, which is a good thing for any international fans.
Lonely guy Farhan's asked us a question. Sorry that you're lonely. He's asked Josh, would you prefer a double pivot so De Bruyne has a free role in transition? And I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, as Stephen said, I think it's a really smart signing because I think it gives Pep Guardiola much more flexibility in midfield. He can obviously, I think one of the problems last season was that Rodri started 33 of their 38 league games. And I think in an ideal world, Pep Guardiola would like to have given him a rest sometimes. Rodri was obviously arguably one of the best players in the Premier League last season. But I think to play 33 of 38 games is probably quite a lot. And whenever Fernandinho did play, there was obviously a drop-off because he just hasn't got the mobility anymore that he used to have. And sometimes Guardiola even paired them both together just because maybe he just didn't feel he had the same level of trust in Fernandinho as he did in the past. And obviously, as a double pivot, Fernandinho and Rodri isn't ideal. They sort of both do the same sort of thing at this stage of Fernandinho's career anyway. But with Phillips, he can either come in and give Rodri a rest. It'll be a slightly different profile of midfielder, but he can still do that. But as Stephen said, he can play alongside him, and that just gives him so much more flexibility. And as you said, Dan, Kevin De Bruyne will be freed up in that respect, and he'll be able to focus on really building that relationship with Haaland and trying to get City scoring even more goals, which is frightening. They scored 99 last season, which was the most in Europe. And now that they could potentially have De Bruyne and Haaland just in pure attacking mode, which is a scary.
I love it, mate. I love it.
Yeah, there's plenty of reasons to be excited. Yeah, really.
I understand fans of other teams won't be excited by it, but from a purely football perspective, given what Kevin De Bruyne can do and Haaland can do, it's fascinating. I'd be terrified, but slightly curious, even if I wasn't a City fan, because as you were saying earlier, De Bruyne's game is last season. He's like, I'm going to score the goals because everyone else was doing it, but not to the extent that he wanted. But he's got to go back to just whipping those crosses in. The amount of time City put the ball to the back post and someone just misses it because Phil Foden's 5'7". He's literally got about 8-9 inches on him, and he's obviously got a better understanding where to be because he reads the game better, and he's faster than people like Foden and Bernardo who are playing the false nine as well. So he's going to get onto the end of so many of those little crosses that just go across, what was it called? The corridor of uncertainty, whatever the cliche was, that kind of thing. But that's where he thrives, and that extra height means he will just get onto those chances that others can't reach because he's bigger and because he's faster. And I can't wait to see how it looks because it could be genuinely fascinating. It could be, if it goes well, it could be an all-time great partnership, So I can't wait, man. I can't wait.
I think you're right. Josh and I are obviously fans of teams that aren't going to compete for the title at all. So to see how Manchester City do, it will be interesting. Tell us a bit about. Sorry, I support Villa. We obviously helped you win the title at the end of last season. So you can thank me later for that one. Let's look now at Julian Alvarez. Stephen, obviously they signed him in January. I'm going to be completely honest, I've not seen much of him. I'm presuming you've done some research and have watched him and know what he's about. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't really paying attention to River Plate's games week in, week out. I'd heard of the name because it's all, Twitter mentions it or someone mentions he's good on Football Manager, that kind of stuff. But I hadn't really paid any attention until City signed him. But obviously being a City content creator, I then paid attention to him. And he's taken off since he signed for Man City to another level. He was already really good, but then he started doing things like scoring 6 in one game and getting another hat-trick. He looks unbelievably good. Obviously there's the caveat that, the step up from South America to the Premier League, many would say is the hardest league in the world, is just such a huge leap in quality. We all know that South American strikers can do it in the Premier League. City have had a few good ones themselves, Aguero, Tevez. We'll ignore Mateus Verosa, which probably no one's ever heard of. But he's in the exact right place to be a striker at Manchester City in terms of like the expectation on what he has to do is also really low, which is good because obviously we've got Haaland. He can come in, he can sit there, he can learn a little bit, and he can take his time to adapt into the squad. And obviously with 5 substitutions as well this season coming up, he's going to get plenty of game time. But in terms of his overall game, weirdly, he's more of a Guardiola striker than Haaland is. Like when you watch him, he seems to be absolutely adept in dropping between the lines a little bit and linking up with people, creating stuff as well. And he reminds me more of Kane than Haaland does, in terms of the way he's happy to play the through balls and happy to link up with people. But this guy just looks so confident. Like the quality of his finishes, the diverse nature of his finishes as well. Like lobbing it over someone or a little header at the near post or smashing it in from 20 yards in the top corner or just expertly deadly in a one-on-one, or then the little through ball to someone else. Like, there's not many things more exciting for any team than a South American wonder kid coming in, because they are what we all love. We all love to see that, because that's the content that gets people excited. And obviously City fans have got a real emotional connection to Argentina for very obvious reasons. Zabaleta, Aguero, Tevez, and so on. So I can't wait, man. I can't wait. He's obviously taking the Jesus role, in terms of the squad position, and Jesus was not a bad, wonder kid that we got from South America as well, who more than lived up to his price tag that City paid for him. Maybe he didn't quite adapt into the player we want him to be as the Aguero replacement, but I think we paid about 30 million for Jesus, and he was worth it. Looking back, absolutely. So Alvarez for me, I can't wait. He's genuinely. I think City fans would probably be a lot more excited by Alvarez if we hadn't signed Haaland, because he comes with such a big reputation, and he comes as well knowing how City play, because Gallardo, is a coach who is very. I think it's Gallardo. I'm pretty certain it is. Someone's going to fact check me in the comments, but I'm pretty certain it is. He's a coach who plays a very similar style of football that Guardiola personally admires as well. So he plays in a City kind of way. He's got pretty much everything to his game. He's just broken into the Argentinian team, scored a load of goals, seems to be pretty two-footed, good turn of pace, lively, intelligent, and a handsome man too as well. So he reminds me of a younger Gabriel that way. He looks a bit like Clancy as well, actually, which is weird. He just seems to be like the perfect package. He's going to be a very successful player, hopefully.
Holding on to the ball is very strong. Obviously, Guardiola likes his players to be comfortable in possession. Passing, very strong. Obvious reasons. Guardiola likes players that are good on the ball. Key passes are very strong. Guardiola obviously wants all his forwards to be able to create chances. Dribbling, very strong in the right situations. That's very ideal. Through balls is strong. As Stephen mentioned, he's very good at dropping deep, and the way City's forwards rotate, one will drop deep and one will go in behind. Obviously, someone that can play those through balls is also obviously ideal. Long shots is strong. Perhaps won't see that too much under Guardiola, but obviously still good to have in your back pocket. And crucially, his finishing is strong. I guess where people may have said with Sterling and Jesus going to new clubs, I guess sometimes you may have felt that let them down sometimes. But Alvarez comes, he was the top goal scorer in Argentina over the last 2 seasons. Obviously, as Stephen said, there's a massive jump up to make, and no one really knows how that's going to go. But Jesus was a couple of years younger, I think, as well, wasn't he, when he came to City? And
he was 19, when he joined. Yeah.
And he obviously had a great start when he first arrived. In just on Who Scored, we've only given out 6 perfect 10 ratings in Argentinian football matches over the last 2 seasons, and Alvarez was responsible for 4 of them. So he comes as someone that has absolutely smashed out the park in Argentina, and it's going to be fascinating. And as Stephen says, he does give Guardiola that option to go back to what we've seen in the last 2 seasons, with that false 9 sort of central striker. And obviously the players that have been used there, like Foden and Grealish, that's not really their natural game, whereas this is Alvarez's natural game. So it'll be fascinating to see how he'll settle in. And obviously the benefit is with Haaland, he can just be eased in, so there's no real pressure on him to hit the ground running.
Stephen, have the sales taken away from Manchester City's window a little bit? Is it taking the shine off Jesus, Sterling, and it's looking like Ake might go as well? Are you surprised by those sales?
Yes and no. Sterling's the one for me. That is taking a bit of gloss off it, because Sterling, I think it is probably fair to say his form hasn't been at the levels that maybe a lot of people would like for the past couple of years from Man City. Like, he's definitely dipped a little bit from between 17 to 19 seasons, where he was absolutely electric and on the cusp of making him one of the highest paid players in the game and so on. And I think his form dropped a little bit. But having said that, I've been always of the theory that he just needed a striker to play alongside. I don't think the false nine system suited him because I think he got a little bit more scruffy in front of goal because the pressure was on him to become the goal scorer. And I don't think he naturally is that guy, the guy to be essentially the striker. And I think it led to him fluffing chances a little bit and again a little bit more hesitant, maybe a little bit more self-doubt kicked in. Whereas, if you've got Gabriel alongside you, or Haaland in this instance, doesn't matter if you miss a chance because they're going to score anyway, probably, which I think really alleviates a bit of pressure on him. So I wanted him to stay for that reason. I feel like back as a right winger, linking up with maybe Foden on the left and Haaland through the middle, I thought he was just a perfect lineup, and I really wanted him to stay and, break back into the team every single week because his game time did drop off massively, I think this is his lowest ever start since he joined Man City last season, and I understand why he's wanted to move on. With Jesus, it is what it is. We made a profit on him, and I think it was the right time for him, so I wasn't too disappointed. I love the guy, don't get me wrong, incredibly hard working, and I think he does improve Arsenal quite a lot, actually. But he's been here for an awful long time now. He literally joined during Guardiola's first season, in the January transfer window. So we've seen an awful lot of Jesus, and he's never quite, become a first team starter. He's been always on the cusp of it, but never quite made it. And with Haaland and Alvarez coming in, I was like, okay, Jesus can move on. If Ake goes, look, he's a fourth choice centre back. It's not great because I want him to stay, but if you make a small profit on Ake, and if we replace him, look, it's much of nothing really. I can't really complain too much. But Sterling is the one for me, really. I wanted him to stay because I think he'd be brilliant. And I think maybe we've lost a bit of that width as well and that pace that he brings because the wingers we've got now, they're all very similar. They'll all be inverted. They'll all be coming in. Mahrez obviously likes to cut in. There's a lot of talk that Cole Palmer, the young Withenshaw lad, is going to play a lot this season, and I think he will do, and I hope he does because I think he's brilliant. And that's just not just fan bias. I think he's a really talented young player. But he's similar to Mahrez in terms of he cuts in on his left foot and so on. And obviously having someone who can go wide and get to the byline when you've got a striker who's 6'5" and just feeds off those tap-ins, we haven't got that option anymore, which is a bit of a shame. So we've lost options there, and we lost obviously an awful lot of pace going forward as well. So for me, losing Sterling definitely has taken a little bit of the gloss off it. If we sign a replacement, that'd be good, but I don't think we're going to.
On the face of it, if Man City have got 100 million for two players that could have left for free next season, so I think that's definitely a benefit. And I think I would be interested to see how much money they would have got for Jesus had he not scored those 4 goals against Watford. I think that was just perfect timing to sort of...
Yeah, he had a good end to the season, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think that really maybe bumped up his price a little bit, which is because if you look at Chelsea have paid a similar amount of money for Sterling than what Arsenal paid for Jesus, and Sterling is obviously a much better player. So I think Chelsea will be delighted with that. But yeah, the fact that they've strengthened direct rivals. Obviously, Jesus is a perfect fit for Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. Worked with him before at City, obviously, and Sterling was Tuchel's top priority this summer, as he's already said. So in that sense, it's probably not great. But I think, I think 100 million for those two players when they could walk away for nothing next summer is pretty good going.
Let's finish this section then with our transfer window grade. Josh, I'll come to you first. What are you giving Manchester City?
So I think Haaland, obviously, outrageous signing. Phillips replacing old Fernandinho is just a massive bonus. If you can sign Cucurella as your left back, I think that would be excellent as well, because I think you are very short at left back at the moment. But then I do think that, as we've just said, I do think the sales just to direct rivals take a bit of shine off it. So I've only gone for an A-, which is still really good. But yeah, I don't think it's ideal that they've gone to Chelsea and Arsenal.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, actually. I mean, if we do sign Cucurella, I think that's what City need. And then at that point, you're looking at, A- or whatever, something like that. Because obviously, the Sterling to Chelsea... Jesus to Arsenal, I don't think is quite as big a deal, because I think Alvarez more than replaces that, and I think Haaland brings in what we've never really got from Jesus anyway, and Arsenal's good as well. I don't think they're a title rival. I think they're a good team, but I don't think they are there yet. So, but Chelsea are, Chelsea, even though they dropped off last season, Chelsea are much more capable of challenging Man City than Arsenal are. So that is obviously a blow, especially if Ake goes there as well. Obviously it's a lot to unfold, so it's hard to say yet, because it's only as we're recording this mid-July, and who knows what City will do. We could sign Cucurella, then decide, sod it, we're going in for Gnabry, and sign him. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's a perfect transfer window, in every single sense of the word. We also brought in Ortega, by the way. He's a really good backup keeper and statistically one of the best goalkeepers in the Bundesliga last year to challenge Ederson. So that's necessary, and that was a good little signing as well. But A-, I reckon. I think that's probably fair, actually.
Don't like the Ortega signing purely because he's got the number 18 shirt, which is not a goalkeeping number at all. I'm going to be a little bit harsh. B+ for Manchester City.
Is that the same thing?
That does feel a touch harsh. I gave Spurs an A star, didn't I? The other day. Yeah, B+, but that does feel a little bit harsh. I've got some concerns, which is good because we're coming on to the concerns section. So I'll run a few of my concerns by you, Stephen. Numbers-wise, I always felt City were one short in the front three positions last season. So technically, I suppose Haaland has replaced Jesus. Alvarez will replace Sterling. But then that still, for me, leaves them one short in those front three positions. Would you agree with that?
Well, we'll have, basically, the way it looks is it'll be Foden and Grealish kind of sort of on the left. It'll be, as you said, Haaland and Alvarez maybe as the strikers, and then it'll probably be Mahrez and Cole Palmer on the right. Obviously, we've got to probably consider that Bernardo Silva can play on the right and probably will play on the right every now and then, given the fact that Kalvin Phillips is here to probably do the Bernardo job alongside Rodri every now and then. I honestly think we might see a little bit more than that than we realise. I think Bernardo will jump over there. And we possibly are one short. I mean,
he's been very critical of that.
Sorry?
It is being very critical, that, from me.
Yeah, I mean, it is. We are probably in an ideal world a little bit short, but at the same time, you could say I'd rather have one winger less than no strikers. I think I would rather have, personally, I think the balance is better, even if it is more short in one place, because it was really lopsided. We were still always trying to find, obviously Jesus sort of is a striker, but he said that he considered himself a winger. Now he said he considers himself a striker again. He didn't know what he was really, and even though he sort of was, I think he is a striker, he just didn't want to really play there at City very often, which was strange, but I actually think it's probably more balanced, but maybe still a bit short. So I think it's at least level for what it was in terms of quality. And I guess the way I look at it is, are we going to be able to recreate, if not improve, on the output of the forwards? And I actually probably think we probably will do. I do think Haaland and Alvarez are much better finishers than the two players that they've replaced in terms of Sterling and Jesus. Obviously, they can't do everything that those two players did, and Jesus is probably our hardest working player in a big game, which is really crucial when you're playing against Chelsea, Liverpool, and he was excellent against those teams this year. Sterling, our liveliest, and of course, Sterling, great for assists and goals as well. But then maybe we don't need to create as many chances. Maybe just Haaland become a goal every 2 chances as opposed to a goal every 3-4 chances at City. So bit short on the right maybe, but obviously I can't prove it. I'm really excited by Cole Palmer. He's literally one of the most exciting young players I've seen in a long time. Don't sleep on him. I think he's going to really surprise people. He was on the cusp of breaking into the first team last season until he got a really long injury, and he played about 8-9 games until his injury in January. And if he hadn't, I think he would have played 20 games last season and people would be a lot more excited by him. We'll see.
Yeah, he scored in Champions League as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He scored on his debut Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup as well, I think. So he's a finisher.
I think what's going to be really important this season to offset the departures of Sterling and Jesus while Alvarez settles and obviously Haaland and City adapt to each other is that I think Jack Grealish's output really needs to improve this season.
Yeah, I agree.
He obviously he scored as many goals and registered as many assists as Joel Matip last season, which obviously isn't ideal for someone that you spent £100 million on. And while I think Guardiola would probably say he was happy with the way Grealish played, I said it numerous times last season. It did feel a bit of a shame that the handbrake was on Grealish. It just did seem like he was playing very safe, and I think that was probably the role he was asked to play. But he definitely needs to score more goals, particularly in the first half of the season, while the new players settle in and the new style of play is sort of worked out. But yeah, I do think that Grealish has to improve that sort of output, and I think. Last season, I think we were all waiting for Grealish to have that big moment, and it seemed like it was going to be in that semi-final against Real Madrid when somehow neither of his 2 chances at the end went in. So yeah, I think he's still waiting for that big moment, and for him personally, it needs to come quite early on this season.
The amount of chances he's created last season, and I know because obviously watch City week in week out, that City just wasted. Like his expected assists was higher than his assists, and it was notably higher, and I think he'll be a lot I think he'll improve this season. And towards the end of the season as well, he did start to take a few more risks. He was running at people a lot more, and especially unlucky against Real Madrid, for example, with that so unlucky with those two chances that made off the line, and then I think he hit the post for another one as well. I think he will go up a level this year, and I do think he could also be a bit of beneficiary as well of having Haaland, like many are, because people like Haaland, they just take players away from other people. Like if you're 2'2" centre backs, you're not going to really stick to Phil Foden or Bernardo or Grealish as a false nine, because they don't have the movement, they don't have the presence. Where if Haaland's in the middle, they are both paying attention to him because you have to, because he's Erling Haaland, and I think that's the thing I'm excited about, is the space that people like Haaland will create for other people, because they have to, they have to stick around him because he's taller, he's faster, he's more alert. You have to be sharper on him because, once again, you take the chances better. So I'm hoping there's more space, and if City do sign Cucurella as well, a natural overlapping fullback will really, really play into Grealish's game as well. And Zinchenko actually showed a tiny bit of that on the last day of the season, particularly against Aston Villa, where he decided to go into...
best game of his career against Aston Villa.
He started to start dribbling. It's mad, because when we signed Zinchenko, I did a video for an old YouTube channel, it was on like 6 years ago, and I remember saying, like, he signed as a winger, you could actually dribble at people, but he had played as a utility left back once in his career, and like he actually like unlocked that old winger trait that he had as an 18-year-old again. He started dribbling people. So if Zinchenko stays and starts doing that again, or Cucurella starts overlapping, then Grealish, it really helps, because he's not running into 2 or 3 players. These one players are running into that as opposed to 2 or 3. So there's loads of little tweaks like that I think could really help someone like Grealish. Or maybe he's the beneficiary of the double pivot. Maybe he plays through the middle every now and then, gets a bit more space. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting season for Grealish. But I do think we'll see an upturn, mainly because he's got the players around him to help it in terms of his output. So we'll see.
Quick word on injuries, Stephen, of the new players. Phillips and Haaland have obviously had injuries over the last couple of seasons. Is their injury record a concern at all? Because if you make these big signings and suddenly they get a long-term injury, again, you might look a little bit short.
I am hopeful it won't be as big a deal, simply because Dortmund and Leeds both have really bad injury records as well. Not just for Phillips and Haaland, they do. Leeds in particular, I know a couple of Leeds fans relatively close to him, and they're like, we just get him back as soon as we can do. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Phillips to play and essentially save Leeds at times, because he was by far their best midfielder. So he's not going to have to play as much. He will get a rest if he needs to. We've got obviously quality. Gundogan can step in if we need a backup 6 after Rodri, and I think there'll be a lot more time for him to heal and not be forced back. And I think it's the same with Haaland. Like, the amount of muscle injuries at Dortmund, I was speaking to a Bundesliga reporter on one of my videos, and he was saying Dortmund are really famous for muscle injuries, because obviously the way they play and for rushing players back a little bit. It could be that they carry on. I'm hoping that they don't, because once again there is options, and we don't need to play every single game. There's also the element as well that I do think the injuries for Haaland, it probably doesn't help that he grew about 5 inches in about 3 years. He literally shot up. It's crazy when you look at him as a 19-year-old to what he is now. He's got so much bigger, taller as well. So I think there's an element of him growing there, some growing pains. But we'll see. It could be the injuries that are a concern. But I think City's physios look at it and go... We always presume, by the way, that physios don't think they can do better than other physios. The way the coaches go, I can play that part of his game. But physios, like City will have very good physios and very good facilities, So I think they'll probably have better facilities than Leeds, with all due respect. Probably better facilities than Dortmund, because we've got that new state-of-the-art complex over the past 10 years. And I do think City's physios will go, well, maybe this is what they're doing wrong, with each player. Maybe we need to change, certain parts of the way they run or something like that, or the way that they recover and so on. Maybe it's a dietary thing, it will help muscle recovery or something like that. But obviously it's a concern, but we don't need them to play every game, which I think was probably an issue for Dortmund and Leeds. So we'll see.
Let's move on now to the best 11, Manchester City's best 11. I mean, the last two we've done, Josh, kind of not picked themselves, but I think we all had a good idea of the best 11 of Liverpool and the best 11 of Spurs. Manchester City, it is a bit more difficult. What have WhoScored gone with?
So obviously we've got Ederson in goal. Obviously there's no debating that, although Ortega perhaps could challenge him, or at least it will probably push him on even to become even better. Because it's not quite clear cut yet whether Cucurella will join. We've left him out of this team. So we've got Cancelo at right back, and it's Zinchenko at left back, helped when he turned into Messi against Villa. So there's no Kyle Walker there. I've actually always wanted to see Zinchenko play in that midfield role that he does for Ukraine really well, but we've only seen that. I think we saw that once last season. But yeah, we've got centre back. We've got Ruben Diaz and John Stones, which is a bit harsh on Laporte because Laporte was a monster at the end of last season and basically played what seemed like with one leg for the last few games. We've got no Kalvin Phillips in midfield. Obviously, a very injury-hit season last year. The midfield three is Rodri, De Bruyne, and Bernardo Silva. On the left, we've got Phil Foden. Julian Alvarez, we've actually got on the right. I think he can play there, and maybe he will play there a couple of times. He arrives with just a monster WhoScored rating from Argentina. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily translate to what it will be in the Premier League. And then with Erling Haaland's up front, I don't think there's any debate about that.
Kyle Walker plays every big game he's available for Man City. He just does. And it's not because he's the most technical player, it's because, look, there's no person in world football who's capable of shutting down one side of the pitch better than Kyle Walker, literally. I mean, I've never seen Kylian Mbappe not challenge someone to a foot race before, and Neymar giving the ball back to the fullback or whatever. So for me, Kyle Walker starts. Even if I understand the logic behind it, I think he's cancer. If we get Cucurella, maybe we'll see a change there. But he obviously hasn't joined yet. So it's Edison. For me, Cancelo will start left back. I love Zinchenko, but it'd be Cancelo. Kyle Walker will be a right back. Pep would start Laporte and Diaz, I reckon, because Cancelo is right-footed. So he always likes a left footer on that side, just for the diagonal and so on. I really like Stones and Diaz together, personally. But for balance, yeah, I think they're the best centre-back partnership. So if we get Cucurella, it'll be Stones and Diaz more, because when Zinchenko was playing in the team, he was Stones and Diaz a lot. But for this one with Cancelo, it's going to be Laporte and Diaz and Walker. Then same midfield, which is the best midfield in the country, in my personal opinion. Rodri, Bernardo, Kevin De Bruyne. And then I think, obviously, Alvarez, I want him to be there, but for now it'd be Mahrez, just because he's proven at this level, and Alvarez is going to have to sit, I think, and watch and learn a little bit with Foden as well on the left, which I'm excited to see, by the way, because Foden played a lot last season as a winger, where I think his breakout season was the year before when he was playing. Sorry, last season he played a lot as a false nine, whereas his breakout season was as a winger. The year before, especially in the Champions League when he was electric. So I want to see Foden on the left again, Haaland, and then he's probably going to be Mahrez for the big games.
Let's now look at the one player to watch. We're all going to pick a player from Manchester City to watch out for this season. Josh, who have you gone for, aided by the WhoScored algorithm?
Well, I've actually gone against it. I've actually gone against it because he didn't make it into our best 11 team, but I've actually gone for Riyad Mahrez. I think with
Stop doing this, Josh. You keep picking people who aren't. So you picked Ryan Sessegnon for Spurs, who wasn't in the best 11, and you've done it again.
I just think with Jesus leaving and Sterling leaving, I think that really frees up the right-hand side for Riyad Mahrez, and I think he could become a real star of this team this season. That's not to say that he hasn't been valued in the past, but you can't deny that he has been used fleetingly by Guardiola. I think he's only started just over 50% of all Premier League matches since he joined. But if you actually take away substitute appearances, so if we're looking at WhoScored ratings from starts alone, since in the time that he joined Manchester City, he's the second top-rated player in the whole division. Only Kevin De Bruyne has a better WhoScored rating from starts than Mahrez. With there being no Jesus, no Sterling, I think Mahrez is going to play more and more on that right-hand side. And I think we could even see him reach the levels that he showed at Leicester when they won the title. I think he scored 17 goals and got 11 assists that season. I think we could really see something similar again. He's one of my favourite players to watch. I just think the way he takes the ball down, his skill, the way he can beat a man, I just love everything about it. And I think, he's my one to watch for this season.
I'm going to go Jack Grealish for the reasons I mentioned earlier. I think usually players have a better second season at City under Pep. I know how good he is. With Sterling gone, I think he'll probably get more football than he did last season, and I think he's just ready. I feel like he'll mean business this season. He'll come back, he'll be sharp, and I just think Jack Grealish is such a good footballer, and I think he'll show that he was worth £100 million this season. Stephen, who are you picking?
Mainly because I think he's going to explode this season in a good way. I think Phil Foden, last season he was kind of sort of the sacrificial lamb for the team, doing the dirty work as the false nine, but still had a decent season and won Young Player of the Year. But I don't think he was as good, or at least as memorable as the season before. And I feel like this season he's going to be back to where he's at his best, facing the goal, running at people and dribbling. And I think Foden could go up a level, to show exactly just how good he is. Like, I feel he could be the driving force a little bit creatively and dropping a little bit deeper, pinging those passes, creating and scoring an absolute ton of goals and running at people again, which I can't wait, because he was dribbling a lot less last season because he had his back to the goal constantly against giant centre back. So I'll probably say Foden.
Lovely. All chose three different people. Always works well for a podcast. We'll finish then with the expectation for the 22-23 season. I think City will win the league. I'll go there. That's my answer. That's done. And I know they'll be desperate to win the Champions League, but I think they are the strongest team in the Premier League. I think they'll win the league, and I don't think it will be as close as it was last season. Josh?
I think the City, unfortunately, are going to win the league again, but I don't think that City and Liverpool are going to get as close to the 100-point mark this season. I think Tottenham have really improved. I think Chelsea, well, I was concerned for Chelsea, but now they're obviously really kicked into gear with some signings. So I think those four teams are going to, well, Chelsea and Tottenham are going to be a lot better this season. So I don't think it's going to be as dominant in terms of the points totals that City and Liverpool rack up. But I do think now that City have the greater flexibility with the signing of Phillips, and obviously they've got Erling Haaland, I do think it's hard to go against City for the title.
Yeah, I think City are going to win the league. I think the starting 11 has probably got better. I think we've probably solved the couple of very, very big problems that we have, and maybe if we get Cucurella as well, we've solved essentially every problem that maybe we have in terms of the gaps, left back, backup DM, a striker or two, that we needed. So I'm probably going to say, yeah, I think City will win the league. And what I'm really hoping is that, it's probably going to be a bit easier for us to score goals, because as good as City are, we had to force it a little bit because we weren't natural finishers in the team, So I'm hoping, it becomes, we win games a little bit easier at times. So I'll say City to win the league. And I do think we're going to be close in the Champions League again. We'll see.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks ever so much for coming on and talking to us. And don't forget, especially if you're a Man City fan, if you haven't watched Dave's channel, Esteemed Kompany, go and do that and subscribe to his YouTube channel. So that's Liverpool, Spurs, and now Manchester City ticked off for the Edge of the Box podcast. We've got Chelsea on Monday and then Arsenal towards the end of the week. So get your notifications on and subscribe to our channel as well, so you know when those videos are coming out. Thanks to Josh, as ever, for chatting to me as well. And as I say, we'll be back on Monday. Only one thing left to say: stay safe.